Okay, so we're going to talk about probability in chapter 4. All right, and so we're going to start in section 4.1 and just talk about some of these key terms. All right, first one we see is a probability experiment, or this thing called a trial. Okay, and this is a process where the outcome is determined by chance. All right, an outcome is basically a result. All right, an individual result of an experiment. All right, a sample space. This is actually more important than you may think when we first read about it. This is a list of all possible outcomes of an experiment, okay? So that'll actually turn out to be kind of important when we get into probability. All right, next word, event. All right, an event is a subset of outcomes. So it's like a group within the sample space, okay? All right, next thing, subjective probability. Subjective probability is like an educated guess. Okay, so subjective probability would be something like predicting the forecast or the weather. Okay, it's not just a blank guess, it's based on knowledge, but it's still just a probability. Okay, then there's this thing called experimental probability. All right, and that is found by conducting an experiment. All right, there's this notation. It looks like this: P for probability of E for event equals F over N, where F represents the frequency and N represents the number of times the trial was done. Frequency, there we go. Okay, now the law of large numbers basically says the greater the number of trials, the closer the experimental probability will get to the actual probability. All right, so if you do an experiment one time, the experimental probability may not be great. If you do it 100 times, it's going to be a lot better. Okay. All right, next, classical probability. This is the most precise. Okay. It takes all the possible outcomes into an event. All right, our formula or notation looks like this: the probability of an event happening equals N of E over N of S. And this looks a little funny, but when we actually do some example problems, you'll see it's not terrible. Okay, this right here, N of E, represents the number of outcomes in an event. Oops. And N of S represents the number in a sample space. All right, so that's it for your vocab for this section, and we'll do some examples next.